Boys album Keepin the Summer Alive. It was produced by Bruce Johnson, released in 1980. So this album for the longest time was my cutoff point with the Beach Boys. Like I didn't get this. I stopped with LA album, and I think that like the reason I did that, like made the choice to not get this album or anything past this, that specifically, and why I didn't stop like earlier, because you know MIU album and LA album tend to get pretty bad reviews. But in their reviews, people seem to have something kind of redeeming to say about them. Like there was always a song or two that people were like, "Oh, these are good songs." And then I did hear some stuff off of them that I liked before. Whereas this one, I never heard anything, I don't think, off here before I bought it a couple weeks ago. Actually, I think did hear the title track on the live album once, but I usually would like skip it. I've only listened to it, I think, like once. And so the reasons I think I stopped here and didn't get this album or anything past it was one, I don't think Brian's that involved with this album other than writing a few songs out. He might actually be in the studio more. I'm not really sure, but it's hard to kind of hear him here, and I don't think he really sings lead a lot. And also Dennis is like only on like one song here. This is actually the last album though that he's on, because he unfortunately passed away before the next album. So he's like barely on here, and I knew that, and so being a big Brian and Dennis fan, thinking like, okay, they're not on there that much. And also this seemed to be the point where most reviewers were like, this is where the band finally gets lost in the suck and like never gets out. So I bought this pretty recently, basically when I decided on doing these reviews. I just got this vinyl because it was cheaper than the CD. So I don't know, the first time I listened to it, I definitely wasn't that impressed. I was like, yeah, I think this is going to be where I finally do think that they start to suck. But I've listened to it probably 5 times since then. Recently, like the most recent, like 3 times pretty recently. And this album's actually kind of started to grow on me. Some of the songs, I do think that it's weaker than the album that came, or weaker than the 2 albums that came before it, like significantly weaker. But I also don't think it's that bad. Like it kind of reminds me of those 2 albums a little bit, and in like kind of its style, which is probably why people don't like it, because they didn't like those albums. But the first song on the album, Keepin the Summer Alive, is sung by Carl and Randy Bachman, who like is from Bachman Turner Overdrive and the Guess Who, I think. I'm not really that familiar with like his work. It's just something I haven't got around to listening to that much or trying out yet. So I don't know anything about like his normal songwriting style, or if this sounds more like him or Carl. But I don't think it's a bad like song, but I think for the opening track and for the title track, it's a little weak. I don't know, some of the lyrics are kind of, I think, weak, which I usually don't like complain about, but I don't know, sometimes certain lyrics just annoy me for some reason. So yeah, not my favorite track on the album, but not horrible. The second song, "Oh Darlin'," is a Brian and Mike song, which I guess I didn't really realize when I didn't get this album how much Brian is at least on the writing. I'm not sure how much he was on the album. I'm not really that familiar with the backstory to this album. But I don't. It doesn't sound like he's on here a lot, but I don't know. It's hard to tell. I don't think I'm crazy about the production on this album, really. But so that's kind of, I guess, I should have mentioned that later. But anyway, "Oh Darlin'," this one I think is a really good song. Just kind of a really nice ballad. It's really catchy. It's got a really good Carl vocal. The third song, "Some of Your Love," another Brian and Mike song. This one I like a lot too. I think it's really catchy. It kind of reminds me of the stuff off their last two albums, which I really liked, but I know a lot of people don't like. Uh, the fourth song, Living with a Heartache, is the other song by Carl and Randy Bachman on this album. This one I think is the better of the two songs. This one I think is really catchy, kind of a more like mid-tempo rocker style song, but I think it's got a great vocal from Carl. Another thing kind of reminds me of like something that I think could have fit on the last two albums, but I get it. Like I don't think a lot of people like the kind of, I don't know, like this like mid-tempo style of song. Really say I feel like I hear a lot of people like kind of ripping on that style of song, but I like it. The fifth song, School Days, Chuck Berry cover. I'm not really that familiar with the original version. I need to go back and listen to a lot of earlier music, really. Although there are a few earlier like artists I'm familiar with as far as that goes. Anyway, not really a fan of this cover. I just think it's not really that convincing. I think the Owl's vocal doesn't really sound that convincing. Just doesn't really work for me at all. So the sixth song, Going On, another Brian and Mike song. This one I think is pretty good, but it's just not like extremely memorable. Other than that, like nothing about it bothers me. I just can't really remember it after I hear it. The seventh song, Sunshine, another Brian and Mike song. This one I really like. I think it's really catchy. Kind of reminds me of things like Won't You Come Out Tonight from MIU. Kind of think like a similar style of song with a kind of repetitive like backing harmony thing going on, but I like it. I think they do that sort of thing well, so it's I think probably my favorite song on the album. The eighth song, When Girls Get Together, another Brian and Mike song. This one it's kind of weird. Can't really decide what I think about it. There are parts of it I like I kind of like the vocal melody and like certain little like changes it makes and stuff. I mean, it's kind of like repetitive at points, and then it like does the like kind of takes a cool turn. So I like that about it, but it's kind of weird lyrically and kind of, I don't know, it's kind of a weird song, but I like a lot of parts of it. The ninth song, Santa Ana Winds, is a song by Brian and Al. I'm not really crazy about like the spoken word intro thing that Al does in the beginning of it, but the song itself has kind of grown on me. The last time I listened to it tonight, I got pretty into it, and I was enjoying it. And then the 10th and final song on the album, Endless Harmony, by Bruce Johnston, is kind of, it's like boring elevator music with a clunky vocal melody is what I wrote down about it. It's just not, I don't like this one at all. I kind of think, it's like, congratulations, Bruce. 2 albums in a row, you have the worst moment. But anyway, not really to hate on Bruce Johnston. I think that, he did bring a lot of good stuff to the band, especially in his like first stint. I think he did a lot of really good things. I think, just at this point in time, this was not such a great thing. I mean, I guess I could see people liking this. I guess I kind of like understand why I don't really understand why he wrote this. It's not, I don't know, I don't like it. It's the only song on here that I kind of, now I would kind of rather skip School Days too if I had a CD version of it. But anyway, Keeping the Summer Alive. So this I don't think, like on further reflection, this should not have been my cutoff point for the Beach Boys. I think that should have come later. I'm not going to say yet when But yeah, this one, not great. It's definitely the worst thing that they had released, probably up to this point. It's just not like, I don't know. I don't think it's as bad as what some people think. I don't think it sound all of it. Like some of it, I think sounds like they were trying and were into it. Some of it, I think doesn't. Um, not. I don't think I'm crazy about the production, like the way it sounds. Either on, I've listened to it on this vinyl, and I've listened to it on like the internet, and it just doesn't sound the greatest to me. Um, but I think overall, I'd probably give it like a 3 out of 5. Say it's like good to mediocre type of album. I think that's what that rating was. Maybe it was a 2. No, I think like, well, I don't know, 3 out of 5 to maybe a 2 out of 5. I think depending on what kind of mood I'm in, because I guess there are some kind of unmemorable songs on here that are a little forgettable, and I'm not always that into them. I do think there are some really good songs on here, but there are also 2 really bad ones. So yeah, I don't know, kind of definitely a mixed bag of an album.